کاوش مدیا.
I personally don't think that any real return to the JCPOA is on the cards. I mean, the United States is putting forward all sorts of demands. Iran isn't going to meet those demands. And basically, Iran isn't going to go back to an agreement that is worse than the one that it signed in 2015. I mean, remember, he didn't even want to sign the one in 2015. It was because Obama then eventually had to make concessions about that it would still allow Iran to continue with enrichment, and it didn't address the issues of ballistic missiles and Iranian foreign policy. So why would Iran want to enter into a worse agreement now, particularly as the UN sanctions have already gone, so that they don't have the pressure of the UN sanctions. So although they have the pain of the American sanctions and the sanctions because of the secondary sanctions through the dollar-denominated trade, but they don't have the world sanctions that it faced at the time. So I don't see any particular value added for Iran to go back to the agreement.
Because the American side showed very little willingness to end those sanctions. I mean, let's remember, everybody, it was the US under Donald Trump that left.
Right.
Okay, and then you hear, George, you and I have been hearing this for over 20 years. Iran's only 9 weeks away from a bomb. They're saying it again. They're saying it again.
Right, right.
And there's never been any evidence that Iran ever attempted to build a bomb, ever. It is a member of the non-proliferation agreement, okay, treaty, okay? It has the right to enrich. And any treaty, any agreement that says you can't enrich is a non-starter. Israel is not a member of the non-proliferation treaty, and everybody knows what's going on there. Okay, the hypocrisy screams to heaven. Iran has been sanctioned for a very long time, and it has income substitution. It started its trade in its own currency with other countries like China, with Russia, with other. I mean, they have learned to adjust. It's like, the U.S. is like on some kind of exercise bike on its balcony, and it's exerting all this effort, but it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere, and that's why what the United States is doing, it's bringing in issues that Iran will not compromise on. You see, I mean, ballistic missiles, basically Iran needs them for its defense. It's not going to give up on that. No. And as for supporting Hezbollah, as for supporting fighters in Syria, fighters in Iraq, these are existential matters for Iran. Iran needs its allies in the region so that if it does get into a conflict with Israel or with the United States, these will be its allies. So these are absolutely essential things. They're not going to give up on them. And particularly now, when things have gone actually much in Iran's favor, because the dollar is not as essential as it was a few years ago. There's there are alternatives. There's trading in national currencies. The digital yuan and so on. So Iran can get around the whole dollar-denominated trade issue. And Iran's been is very subtle in the way it pursues its policy. It's not, the days of 1980 when Iran was completely isolated in the world, they're gone.
Persians probably most likely do not use American sayings and slang, but I would say that in Vienna, the Iranians came to the conclusion that the Americans were all hat and no cow, okay? And they did, and they went there. But what Iran and the issue of long-range missiles is the key issue right here, because it ties in with regional stability as they see it with their allies and friends in the region. And if you look at it, if you look at the time that Trump left and going up to the talks in Vienna, it's just given Iran much more time to develop more sophisticated long-range missiles. Now, we don't really know officially, we don't know who hit the Aramco operations in Saudi Arabia. Right. We can leave that aside, but we can't leave aside that it was attacked, and it was attacked in a most sophisticated way. And I remember talking to you about this at the time, is that this is probably the tremor that hit the Middle East, okay? You want to talk about the JCPOA, you can talk about it until the cows come home, but the fact that the Aramco operations were hit so easily, and I don't think there was a loss of life. I mean, it was a very sophisticated, pinpointed attack that nobody saw coming. The Saudis and everybody else is paying out the wazoo for these Patriot missiles and all that, and they're useless, George. So you have all of these countries with all their shiny hardware they probably don't even know how to use, and they have to get mercenaries to do it for them, if not Americans to do it for them. And so the Iranians, when they look at the entire panorama right here, they're kind of sitting pretty. Just before we convene here, I read a foreign policy magazine article. It was awful, as usual. It's really awful stuff what they write in there. And it was just doom and gloom, and Iran's going to come groveling. It's at its end of its rope. The walls are, no, it's not. It's not. It has options, and they're showing it.
And you're right. I mean, what happened with the Aramco thing is just shows that if there is a conflict, if there is a serious shooting war, Iran has the means at its disposal to absolutely mess up the world's energy supply. That's a serious business. I mean, also remember what happened after the assassination of General Soleimani. Remember, the Iranians hit these barracks in Iraq. Boom, they hit this American barracks in Iraq. Trump made light of it, but at the same time, they caused a lot of damage. The United States did not retaliate because the United States realized not a good idea to escalate this conflict with Iran. I mean, that it's a dangerous business. So exactly. So Iran, yes, obviously Iran is not the equal of the United States, but it can do a lot of damage, and you don't want to get yourself into a war with someone who can do a lot of damage to everybody, to U.S. interests and to the world interests.
It's all about asymmetrical responses, okay? Because Iran doesn't need overwhelming force. It has enough technology and obviously political will. I mean, you look at places like Qatar. I mean, if a conflict starts, Qatar could come to an end. I mean, quite literally, all right? I mean, and what you said about the oil markets, absolutely, this would be catastrophic. The entire foreign policy of architecture in the post-war period up to the fall of the overthrow of the Shah was completely fake. It was based on false premises, okay? Yeah. And American foreign policy vis-a-vis Iran today continues on a false premise.
Right. Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. And then even when you got the whole issue of the global war on terror, we know that the issue of the terror all comes from Sunni fundamentalism. It's Sunni fundamentalism. Everyone knows this. That the origin of all of this is Saudi Arabia. It's Saudi money. It's funding these madrasas everywhere throughout the Middle East, in Central Asia. It's all coming from Saudi Arabia.
And it was General Soleimani, which was the greatest fighter of these people, and the U.S. took him out. Okay. Right. Wow. Great job. Great job. It was ridiculous. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Exactly.
آنچه در مورد ما میگویند